It took one half of football for Shedeur Sanders to do what months of mock drafts and hot takes couldn't: make a whole league look foolish. Not because Friday's preseason win was some cosmic revelation, it wasn't, but because a fifth-round rookie with almost no first-team reps walked into an NFL game, made the kind of throws and reads scouts said he couldn't, and forced everyone who ghosted him on draft night to confront the simple possibility that the evaluation market got it wrong. Let's be blunt. The tape matters more than the rumors. Sanders finished his debut 14 of 23 for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those numbers aren't staggering on their face, but the moments were. He threaded a back-of-the-end-zone dart on a bootleg. He stepped up in the pocket and delivered a strike into traffic. He moved the offense in short yardage, red zone, and 2-minute drills without panic. For a player drafted at 144, those are not the actions of a throwaway prospect. They're the actions of someone who's been taught to process, place, and pace an offense. So what happened across draft weekend? No single answer will satisfy the conspiracy theorists. There are whisper campaigns, off-field questions, interview room missteps, and 1,000 small perception kills that can drop a prospect. But the outcome is stark. A player who shouldn't have been there on day 3 wound up on a Browns roster with a clear path to reps, and a league full of buyers missed a market inefficiency. That's not just embarrassing. It's expensive. Teams passed on clean tape for comfort with measurables, background narratives, or hypothetical risk aversion. That's a reminder that process bias still rules too many draft rooms. There are 2 levels to why this matters. The first is the individual injustice. Sanders falls, teams that passed look like they were asleep, and a rare talent lands in an organization that, for once, may have struck gold. The second is structural. The NFL's evaluation machinery still overweights interviews, combines and neat narratives at the expense of on-field context, scheme fit, and upside. When a high-skill player slides because his media story is messy or a pre-draft meeting goes sideways, the market is telling us something. The current system values predictability over projection, and predictable processes systematically undervalue certain profiles. To be fair, a single preseason half doesn't rewrite scouting journals. Preseason competition is curated, play calling is conservative, defenders don't always show their full bag of tricks. But scouts and execs aren't paid to make excuses for why their projection missed. They're paid to find edge cases where others are wrong. Sanders just handed them a glaring example. If his tape this week is the outlier, the chorus of overreact will be loud and right. If it's the start of a trend, consistent reps, improved decision-making against first-unit pressure, then Cleveland didn't just get lucky. They got an undervalued asset while the rest of the league paid lip service to the draft's righteousness. For the Browns, this is a remarkable bit of organizational fortune. Joe Flacco provides immediate stability, and Flacco's presence gives the team breathing room to develop Sanders without forcing him into a panic start situation. Cleveland now has a low-cost, long-control option who could be molded quietly, while other teams scramble to patch quarterback holes with short-term veterans. From a roster construction standpoint, that's gold. Development upside with minimal cap pain and no draft capital sunk into him. But let's not romanticize the path from preseason promise to week 1 readiness is steep. Sanders still needs reps against disguises, stunt-heavy pressures, and strategic blitz packages. He must prove consistent processing under duress, better pocket mechanics when protection breaks down, and turnover discipline when windows close. The Browns staff must now decide whether to accelerate that development or keep him sheltered. Mishandling his growth, throwing him into a starter role prematurely, or bottling him up on the bench would squander both the narrative and the investment. There's also a lesson for every NFL front office. The draft is a messy, noisy process, and risk comes in many forms. Not only in drafting a player with perceived character concerns, but in letting market bias blind you to on-field evidence. Teams that can squarely evaluate talent, ignore the static, and trust measured upside will consistently win the long game. That's the future. And right now, Shedeur Sanders is the market correction everyone should have seen coming. Finally, what he did was moral clarity dressed as football. You don't always get to control how people judge you, but you do control how you answer when given the chance. Sanders answered. He didn't need to rewrite the narrative in a single night. He simply supplied the work tape and let the game do the talking. The result is uncomfortably simple for a league that prides itself on being right. The NFL missed on a prospect it should not have missed. That error belongs to a system, not to a player. And for Cleveland, that mistake looks like an opening, if they're smart enough to build on it. It took one preseason game for Shedeur Sanders to do what months of headlines and draft night hand-wringing couldn't. Prove a lot of NFL decision-makers got this one wrong. Sanders came into Friday night as the biggest storyline in a sleepy preseason slate, not because the Panthers or Browns are must-see TV, but because one player's presence made an otherwise forgettable matchup impossible to ignore. The result? He finished 14 of 23 for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns, showed accuracy on throws that mattered, made a few rookie mistakes, naturally, and did it while operating with almost 0 first-team practice reps. That's not just promising. That's a flashing neon sign. Let's be blunt. Shedeur's tumble from projected early pick to a 5th-round selection was the draft's biggest mystery, and for many, its most embarrassing outcome. Whatever whispers, rumors, or private red flags circulated before April, none of them were reflected in the tape he put on the field Friday. On the plays that counted, red zone timing, moving in the pocket under pressure, delivering touch passes in traffic, he looked like a player who belongs on the big stage. That's why people are hot, not because he's suddenly a finished product, but because the gap between expectation and outcome on draft night now looks glaring. This isn't about making the Browns out to be genius draft evaluators overnight. It's about how the league as a whole underestimated a talented, battle-tested college quarterback. NFL teams passed repeatedly on a guy who'd produced at a high level in college and then seemed surprised when he handled a live situation like a pro. Preseason tape isn't destiny, but it's not meaningless either, especially coming from a rookie who'd barely seen the first team. Coaches notice. Fans notice. Opponents notice. What does this mean for Cleveland? At minimum, it complicates a crowded quarterback room. If Sanders keeps flashing like this in exhibition play, the Browns can't pretend he isn't a factor. They'll have to decide whether to accelerate his development, give him more meaningful reps, or risk watching another team fall in love with him during waivers or trade season. For the league, it's a reminder to be careful about letting narratives, whether around interviews, personality, or pedigree, overshadow on-field evaluation. Will Shedeur be a franchise QB? Too soon to crown him. But one thing's clear. After one game, the NFL has a lot of explaining to do. If teams really passed on him for the reasons people feared, Friday night wasn't just a nice debut, it was proof they missed the memo. And in a league obsessed with finding the next playmaker under center, that's a costly oversight.